So let me ask you a question. Could dating be like dieting? Think about it. You jump from one partner to the next, hoping that this one will be different. You were all in to begin with, but 30 days in, and a lot of the time, it starts fizzling out. Well, my guest today is going to tell you just how much dating can be like dieting. Toni Marinucci is a registered dietitian and business owner of Tips with Toni, who ironically teaches people how not to diet. Her team of RDs provide online nutrition coaching to help women break free from the all or nothing mindset and encourage balance instead, which I love. Toni's mission is to end restrictive diet culture by providing simple tips to healthy living while incorporating foods you love. She recently gave a TEDx talk and wrote a book titled Once Upon a Diet, where she discusses the parallels between dieting, dating, and romantic relationships and how we treat them the same. You can find her at www.tipswithtoni.com. So welcome, Toni. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, we see eye to eye on so many things. I was just telling you before we started recording, like that I've been reading your book for the last couple of days, and it's a nice short read, but it's so relatable. It's like, oh yeah, there's me. Yep, I started dieting as a young girl as well. And it's so cool how you do. Like, I just laughed because I thought, oh my gosh, like before I got married, it was so like that. Like dating was exactly the same as dieting. So let's just start with you telling your story, because like so many women, you realized at a really young age that your body was not the same as everyone else's or wasn't acceptable, and you wanted to change it. So how old were you when that started and what happened?
Wow. Well, I mean, as early as I can remember, I always kind of felt like the oddball out being overweight. And I always kind of had these thoughts, but I feel like the transition really happened at 9 years old. I write about it actually in my book. I would spend my summers in Florida with my grandparents. And at first the summers were just to have fun. But when I was 9, the summers became about like, I wanted to lose weight so that when I went into, the 5th grade, I could have potential of maybe my crush would like me back, And every single summer, I kind of spent those summers down there as like this pursuit of weight loss. And I'll never forget the reason why I say I was 9 is because I used to do these fun, like dance Barbie workouts as like for fun. I love dancing. And I'll never forget, there was like this shift in me where I was doing the Barbie dance workout where it used to be for fun, now became almost like I had to, or almost like a punishment, or almost like you can't like lay by the pool with your cousins until you finish the workout, right? So even if I didn't do that, then I do a lap around like the community pool before I could like sit down. And it was that young where I really started to use exercise as a way to almost like be able to earn the food. I was judged about what I ate or how much, so I would started eating in secret. And a lot of this, unfortunately, got kind of worse as I got older. So as I got older and I was now a preteen and then a teen, just the disordered eating patterns became significantly worse. It was more restriction, more exercise, which led to more overeating, which the cycle continues, which was researching this in a magazine, doing this workout. And not for nothing, just sidebar, I was actually very athletic. I played basketball, volleyball, I threw shot put and discus. So I was already active, and I would like come home from practice and still work out more. Wow. So it was very obsessive. If I was going to use one word, the word would be obsession. And it was really obviously unhealthy, and really it was like a dead end. Honestly, it was just a vicious cycle. So long story short, I went to school to become a registered dietitian because I wanted to learn how to eat and how to lose the weight. Honestly, I'm being truthful. I went to school to figure out how to help me. And so the short version, I'll say, is I finally healed those parts of me. Yes. But if you read my book, it was a very long journey. I finally eventually healed those parts of me. And now I have a team of dietitians who work under me, where we basically help people where we once were. So those women who felt insecure, struggled with body confidence, struggled with knowing what to eat, how to eat, all of those things. I'm really helping them to kind of figure out what works best for them and their lifestyle rather than looking outside themselves. We really help them to look inward, pay attention to how certain foods make them feel, and find balance in their eating habits. So it wasn't easy. That was a very quick way of sharing my healing journey, but that's basically my story from where I was and where I'm at today.
It's really sad. Like, it just breaks my heart because my son is 8. So I think, imagine, I mean, a 9-year-old isn't far off from him, and he's so little to me. And I think that is devastating that a little 9-year-old girl was trying to lose weight in the summer. Like, that just is heart-wrenching.
It is. And what's even sadder is, as I've, been doing this for many years now and talked to a lot of women who are in our program, like they had younger experiences of remembering that. I was talking to someone the other day and she was saying that she remembered being in kindergarten. And so she was 5 and her mom made her cover up her bathing suit because she felt like she was, bigger than the other girls. So she made sure, she's like, when you're with people, put this on. And she was 5. No other kids had to put a cover up on, and so it's unfortunately it happens to a lot of women at all different ages and also all different cultures. So I talk about my experience being Greek and Italian, where it was so conflicting because as Greek and Italians, you're like
supposed to
encouraged to eat. And so I'd be encouraged to eat. But if I took too much, then I'd get the side eye or the puffy cheeks or like the stern look. And it was so hard to navigate. And then as I was talking to so many other women, it was, if they were from in the Jewish background or Colombian or Indian, it didn't matter the culture, doesn't matter where they grew up. It was basically something that your weight is something that can be controlled. And if it's not controlled, then you're not being a good person. And that's really, unfortunately, the narrative that has been told to us and been picked up. And it stays with us even as we become adults, and we might know better, but we don't really know how to do it differently. We don't know how to do it differently.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, like, what happens in our youth, how ingrained that gets in our brain. Like, I'm 40, turning 46 next year, and I still have to be careful with stuff, because if I start trying too hard to restrict or trying like, I'm just going to get off a couple pounds or something. It's so funny how immediately, as soon as I start doing that, my brain goes bleep, and it just shifts into this like panic mode almost of how it felt as a teenager before I would go make myself throw up because I had bulimia. And so I just like, not that I haven't made myself throw up since I was a teenager, but it amazes me how my brain can still go down those bad pathways of, like when you start to eat normally again, after you maybe do some restriction, and how you almost want to start panic eating and binging. And it's like, it's still in there. And you can imagine that if you started at 9, how hard that would be to break those negative patterns in your as an adult.
I'm really actually, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so important for us, especially as professionals, to let people know that we're human. Yes. And first of all, second of all, I think the other thing people think is like, when I say I've healed or I'm healing or whatever that is, that doesn't mean I don't still have those thoughts. Right. Yeah. We've just learned how to respond to them differently. And so when we get triggered, we know that, okay, that means I need to look in. What's going on? Am I stressed? Am I tired? Am I hungry? Like, what am I trying to control? Like, we know that it's not actually about the food. So most of the time, but we then need to just not respond, just acknowledge it. Yeah. Like, oh, these are my old thoughts. Interesting.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
I always say I have to take my own advice all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's easier said than done, but it's a practice. And as you know, I'm sure you've known for many years, you've been free of it. Right. So but you still always have to be mindful of it.
Yes. And we're lucky, Toni, because we have so many tools in our toolbox, because we're fanatics about this kind of stuff. We're researchers. We, we're podcasters, which means we get to learn from so many different people, which just increases that tool bag of ours. But not many people have that opportunity like we do. So, but yes. So you say in your book, just as my clients jumped from diet to diet, hoping each one would be the one, I would jump from relationship to relationship. So let's talk about how you came up with this parallel of dating is like dieting, because I've
Yeah.
never heard that before, and you're just spot on with it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, so because like I said, at some point I finally I realized, okay, restriction wasn't the answer, it was part of the problem. And I need to focus on how food was going to make me feel instead of how it was going to make me look. And I just my nutrition I started making headway. In the book, it's interesting. In the book, because of just the way I had to write, I had to pretend it was all happening at the same time, just because it was just easier to write in that way. But really what happened was I healed my relationship with food a lot earlier. But then I realized, as before women would start working with us, they had this pattern of jumping from diet to diet, hoping each one was the one. And then I realized, as I was sitting in therapy, I was like, wait a minute. Oh my God, is this not the same boyfriend that I dated 5 years ago, just with a different name and a different face? This is the same person, but not the same person. You know what I mean?
Yes,
same story, different book. Right. So I was just like, wow, here I am, frustrated, upset, oh God, can't they just see it? It's not going to be in the long run. This quick fix is not going to work for them in the long run. Why don't they just see it? Meanwhile, here I was repeating the same patterns, just in relationships. Right. So I say that to say, I'm actually not a relationship expert. I am a nutrition expert. I'm not a relationship expert, but I know how it feels to be on that other end, to just so desperately just want something. Yeah. And so you'll almost do anything. You'll ignore all the red flags just to get there. Right. And so I say that to let people know that I am very similar. I just was in a different phase in my life when I learned things at a different time period. But yeah, the dating and dieting, that was the first analogy that I came across. And then actually that's where I did my TED talk, and that's what I talked about in my TED talk, but I only had 8 minutes to talk. Right. And I was like, okay, that's not enough time. And as I was exploring which parallel I wanted to talk about, I realized there were so many more. And that's when the book was birthed. And I was like, okay, I got to write a book about this, because there's so many ways in which we treat them the same.
Yes, I think of it's almost exact same timing too for me, actually, which was trying to find the one when it came to a husband or a partner, while at the same time I was trying to find the one when it came to the magic weight loss cure. And I was repeatedly going through so many different diets and men. Yes. Trying so hard, like you said, ignoring all the red flags, which women do all the time. And on both situations, I just talked to a woman yesterday. She's like, yeah, I've been keto for a couple of years, but my hair's falling out. My skin's really, really dry. And I'm thinking, so why are you still doing this? If this is, these are red flags that this is not working for you anymore. But we shove it aside because we want so bad for it to be the one. And it's
right. And because we're measuring the wrong thing. Right. So when it comes to dieting, a lot of people are fixated on weight loss. So if the scale's moving, it's quote unquote working, but they're ignoring things like their hair, their skin, their nails, their bowel movements, their energy, their libido, their confidence, their body image. There's so many other more important things. I could continue. Right. And then when it comes to relationships, it's kind of oh, if I'm in one, that's successful, right? Yes. Or if the next step is oh, we're gonna get married, because we were dating for a long time, now we're getting married, then we're having a house, then we're having kids. Those are the things people are looking at. But really, it's what's the quality of the relationship, right? What's going on the inside? Is there good communication? Do you have shared values? Are you aligned in a similar vision? What's on the inside, right?
Yeah.
So that's very similar. That's what I say in my book is you can be both happy and healthy regardless of the number on the scale and regardless of your relationship status, when you look at the meat of what's inside your journey and what's going on the inside.
Yes, exactly. And I remember getting to the point too where I finally was like, okay, I keep repeating the same patterns in my relationships. And I realized I had to turn inward and heal something so I could stop repeating these same patterns and attracting these same failed relationships one after the other. And dieting is really the same way. It's you got to really step back and go, okay, I've just done 20 different diets in the last 5 years. None of them have worked. So what's the common denominator here? Why isn't this working? Is there something that I have to look at on the inside in order to lose the weight, basically?
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
We don't tend to go there because that takes work.
Yeah, it does take work, and it's also kind of hard to sit with. So, because
Yeah.
at the root of that, often, like for me, it was, if I was being really honest with myself, I was for so long just trying to prove to that younger version of myself that I was worthy of love, worthy of acceptance.
Same.
And it was so, it's kind of hard to really realize that, because you could almost, once again, like even at that time when I realized it, like I had a good job, I had lost some weight, like, so I was a dietitian, right? I had like accomplished X, Y, and Z, yet I still had to realize, like, wait a minute, like, still, even though like externally it seemed like I healed, I never really went inside and really did the work.
Yeah.
Right. And so I really needed to detach that, because what I kept doing is I was trying to prove twofold. And I think a lot of nutrition professionals, fitness professionals, health and wellness professionals can relate to this. So the first part was trying to prove to like that younger version of myself that I was worthy. And then the second part was, even when I lost the weight, I've just been naturally in a bigger frame and in a bigger body. And I was getting comments, actually, even when I wasn't working for myself, I worked for another company, where it was like, oh, how are you going to help me lose weight when you're overweight yourself? Kind of a situation, like, as a registered dietitian in a bigger body, so many people just look at what you look like as like to support, as if that makes you knowledgeable in the field. And so there was a part of me that felt like, because I had all this knowledge, and because I had, people, I was an influencer, people looking up to me, like I needed to quote unquote fit the part. So that's when I had that period in my career, actually, where I went through another level of extremes. And I did go back into that, when we were talking about earlier, kind of that mindset that sometimes we follow that. I did for a period of time. And then I got sick, actually, which was a blessing in disguise, because it made me realize, like, what the heck am I doing? Like, who am I trying to prove this to? Like, yeah, my body is capable of being 30 pounds leaner if I barely eat and exercise like a savage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then obviously I got sick because my everything was all out of whack. And I know you talk about hormones all the time. Like, mine were just shot to crap. Let me use a
Yep.
nicer term. But like, it was just clearly not sustainable. And so, yeah, my body could technically get there and I can do it. And I had all this knowledge, but that's not for me. And I don't need to prove it to anyone, because obviously it doesn't even lead to a good place. And even if it did, it never felt like it was enough. I just kept chasing the number on the scale and chasing it and chasing it and chasing it and chasing it. And I became obsessed again.
Yeah.
And I had to, remove myself from that mindset.
Yeah. And I think so many of the listeners are going to be able to relate to that, chasing the number on the scale. And, I had a client yesterday who said, oh, I got down to this weight, which was, I think, 15 pounds lighter than she was right now. And she's like, I felt, I really liked how that looked. And so I'd really like to lose that 15 pounds. And I said, well, how long did it stay there for? And what were you doing to get down to that weight? I had a divorce. She said, I didn't eat because I was so stressed out. I'm like, okay, so let's just look at that for a second, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. But just point proven. It's that's not, you can't chase that number if that's what it took for you to get there. 100%. Who wants to do that? You can't sustain that for the rest of your life. You're going to stay in a high stress starvation state in order to lose that 10 pounds. That's a sign that no, you're supposed to actually be maybe at the weight that you are, because that tends to be where you feel better. Maybe not to you look better, but to where you feel better.
Totally.
And I have to say too, Toni, that, looking back, in my 20s, my teens, like you, I was looking at, magazines for weight loss, and you're looking at these models, or nowadays it's like you go on Instagram, Facebook, wherever on social media, and you see these like hard ripped women in their bikinis with a 6-pack, and you're like, yeah, I want to take her program. Most people go that way. Now I'm different. I'm like, I'd rather look at women like you and I and say, oh, this woman is real looking. How real is it to see women with 6-packs? No, like, I never see them in life, unless you're going to the gym and they're a fitness model or something, or they're genetically built that way. But people like you and I, it's like we have curves, and that is more normal. Those are the women that we should be looking at going, okay, this person's healthy. She's got good skin. She's got good hair. She's comfortable in her body. That to me is much more attractive than no offense to the fitness models out there. I'm just saying from a weight loss standpoint, when you're looking for a program, because you had said like people judged you for being a little bit curvier, yet you were a dietitian. And I get that. It's not like, once again, I have that all figured out either, but
but it's so true. At the end of the day, though, it goes down to like your beliefs dictate your thoughts, which dictate your actions, right? So if you believe that a six pack is considered healthy, then that's your thoughts going to be like, if you don't have that six pack, then therefore I need to work really hard to get that so that I can be healthy, right? Rather than believing that true health is really just taking care of your body in the best way that you know how, not in an extreme way, but in a consistent way. And it incorporates, eating well and sleep and stress management and movement. And, that if you believe that, then your thoughts are going to be a little bit more balanced. They're not going to be so extreme, right? And you're probably going to take actions that are a little bit more consistent rather than this all or nothing approach.
Yeah, exactly. Now you talk about defining your eating archetype. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. So I wanted to create like just a fun quiz for people to take, not to put them in a box, because, that's the last thing I want to do. I believe, nutrition is very individualized, but also just fun, like a fun play on like kind of the Disney, like Once Upon a Diet theme. I decided to create an eating archetype quiz to help people to understand which Disney princess they eat like. So each Disney princess is known for this specific characteristic that when harnessed correctly can actually be like their superpower, but we kind of watch sometimes in the Disney world, they kind of get abused and it does not like the best thing for them. So for example, like Cinderella is known for being hopeful. And it's great. In the end, she ends up with the prince and all that. But if her fairy godmother never came into the play, like she would have just settled for less than ideal circumstances. She was basically bullied and she was just hoping that everything was going to get better. And it's just like, we have to turn that hope into something positive and, empowering rather than limiting. And so when you take the quiz, it takes like less than 5 minutes to take. It's only like 10 questions. Basically, you would get, you would be told kind of which Disney princess you eat like and kind of how because think about Cinderella, hopeful. They're basically the person, they're the undereater, they're the over exerciser, they're the very rigid kind of eating because that's just what they were taught, right? They're what they had to do to survive, quote unquote. So basically it's teaching them how to kind of break free from that, right? So who else do I have in there? Jasmine is known for her independence. So we want to help those who resonate with Jasmine kind of step into that, because when they don't, they might be more of the emotional eater because they're not living a life that's truly aligned to them. They might be, married to someone that they don't want to be, or in a relationship to someone they think they should be, right? Jasmine's great. She's a superpower because she's like, in the movie, she doesn't settle for marrying someone she doesn't want to. She sticks to what she wants to do, right? But yeah, so each Disney princess, there's 4 of them. You can kind of get one of those, and then I give tips on how to kind of break free from how you might normally eat, but to really more so to create that individuality within you.
Well, you'll have to give me the link to the quiz so that the listeners can go figure out which princess they're most like. Yeah. I was going to say, because I thought you were going to say like which body type. And I'm like, they all have the exact same body type.
No, they do. Yeah, no, it's not. I would never, ever classify someone as that. But that's actually something I share in the book. Like, and I talk about it on podcasts when I've ever been interviewed. It's just, even if you weren't like directly told, like for me, I was directly told, if you don't lose the weight, you'll never get a boyfriend. But say I wasn't even directly told that. And I just grew up in the 90s watching all those Disney princesses, Cinderella, Ariel, Jasmine, Pocahontas, all of them. They all had the same hourglass figure. Every single one of them.
Yes.
Their only difference was their hair color. Yeah. Right? So if I, wasn't even told that, I would have just picked up on it.
Yeah.
Because they never, the girls, all of those girls in those hourglass figures, even their princesses and their Disney characters, they get the guy in the end. There's not a lot of bigger, curvier women depicted in the media as getting the guy in the end.
No.
Very, and very the rarely. Only one that like comes to me, I mean, now it's getting a little bit better, but like even when I was younger, like I don't know if you ever saw the movie Shallow Hal, but it was like all about how the guy falls in love with her because she's actually a bigger woman, but she in the movie because I don't know, he like that's a spell, it's something silly, but he sees her for the beauty of on the inside, and she looks hot, like this hot flaming, like, curvy model, but really she's like she's a much larger girl, larger woman, and Shallow Hal sees her for who she is on the inside. So he falls in love with her, but then finds out what she really looks like, and it's like it all went away.
Oh,
It's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. It's just
yeah.
always been kind of what we've seen. So that's why we have these thoughts and these beliefs, because they were just kind of subconscious even.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the difference between disordered eating and eating disorder.
Yeah. So it's a pretty fine line. So as a registered dietitian, technically I'm qualified to help and treat people who have an eating disorder, but because of where everything we do, it's all online. I think it's really best that if someone really is struggling with an eating disorder, that they seek a registered dietitian where they can meet in person and local and kind of have a team approach, especially depending on kind of where they're at in the severity of that eating disorder. The difference is like it would be classified in like a diagnostic criteria depending on the eating disorder for like if how often they're feeling preoccupied about their body, or intentionally skipping meals, or binge eating, or purging. And purging can be in all forms, it's not just self-induced vomiting, but it could also be excessive exercise. It could be taking pills or laxatives, and even extreme restriction technically as well.
Right.
So all that to say, it's a lot. I don't want to say like it's a little bit harder to be classified with an eating disorder because there's such specific criteria. And one of them, which I think they need to take out, is like weight and BMI, right? So someone who's overweight could be struggling with anorexia, for example, because they're literally restricting their intake and not intentionally not eating, but because they're naturally in a larger body, they're not meeting the BMI of like under 18, which is considered where that's part of the criteria. So they could be having these eating disorder qualities or characteristics, but not 100% classified. So that's where they kind of just get lumped into disordered eating. But really, if the criteria was set differently, I think they probably would be classified with an eating disorder, depending on how consistently or frequently they're having those thoughts or acting in those behaviors. But all that to say, the reason why I always like to talk about this on a podcast is because if we were to kind of list kind of the things that are related to disordered eating, it's like intentionally skipping meals, cutting out whole food groups, feeling preoccupied about your body, avoiding social situations because you don't feel confident in your body. These are all things that unfortunately we live in a society where it's completely normalized and so common that most women, especially if you grew up in, the world, like I feel like it's all over the place, you're gonna unfortunately have struggled with that, especially because we have like trends and fads, like the ketogenic diet, or intermittent fasting, or there's certain things that are kind of pushed as like a healthy way of living or eating, that it's just something that people now feel like it's almost normal for them to exclude an entire food group, to cut out carbohydrates, to completely ignore their hunger cues and go, with intentionally like restrict and not eat. It's so normal, unfortunately. And like people are getting rewarded for doing workouts like 75 hard, or these things like they're like 2-a-day workouts of they're like challenges for 75 days, do 2 workouts a day, it's just 2 hours.
Gosh.
Yeah, like, and that's like something what people look at as like it should be rewarded, or that's a great thing, but we know that stuff's not sustainable. And so all that to say that you need to work with a nutrition professional if you struggle with disordered eating or an eating disorder, but be mindful that a lot of what appears to be normal eating patterns are actually disordered eating patterns, and the sooner you heal that, the less likely you are to develop a full-blown eating disorder.
I think a lot of people are probably getting their back up right now.
And
I run into this all the time. And I said recently on a podcast, what would we have called, let's say 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if somebody came to you, maybe your daughter, your sister, your mom, somebody, and said, I'm eating 1 meal a day. Or I'm not going to eat for 3 days, and then I'm going to eat one meal a day for 5 days. And that's the pattern I'm going to do for weight loss. We would have immediately checked them into the hospital and said, this person has anorexia. But because we've labeled it fasting, suddenly it's okay. And so when you say that it's disordered eating, I think a lot of people are going to go, no, it's not. This is what's good for me. This is what Dr. So-and-so said I should be doing. And, you know, it's not to say that these diets don't have their place. They absolutely do. I use them all the time in my practice. You know, if you're insulin resistant, then yeah, going ketogenic or carnivore for a period of time to reverse that could be healing. But people are abusing it and really harming their body because of it. I'm sure you probably agree.
Yeah, definitely. And creating their own interpretations of a lot of things. A lot of people are kind of like doing this without being under supervised by a registered dietitian or a nutrition professional in some way. And so therefore, unfortunately, they don't know what to do outside of that. So they're in those situations for a prolonged period. And what either happens is they stay in something too long where now, like we were shared before, like things kind of get wacky and you can get sick and, you know, your hormones can get altered versus you kind of are like, oh, well, this is too hard. So you're so tired of restricting, you go to that screw it mindset. And then you go in the complete opposite way and you kind of go to like, I don't care, or like, oh, this is too hard. And then we're back into that all or nothing mindset.
Yeah. So let's talk about just some tools then for everybody now that we've kind of laid it all out there for you guys. Where can somebody start in order to heal this, you know, what we're getting bombarded with in social media? How do we get away from it? How do we lose weight, but in a really healthy, sustainable way? Because I know you talk about certain steps that a person should take when they're about to go on a weight loss journey. So let's talk about some of those.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many. I would say the first thing we always want to do is bring awareness to what's going on, right? And so there's a saying, if you can track it, you can change it. Now, for some people, tracking could be the exact reason that got them here. So maybe not tracking every single macro or calorie, but more so just writing down what you ate or taking a picture of your food, just being mindful and aware of what's coming into your body and how you're treating your body. It also doesn't actually even have to start with food. You can think about your water. You can think about your sleep. You can think about movement, stress management. These are all really, really important factors to a healthy lifestyle. And so I think what happens is a lot of people fixate so much on the food that they forget that all these other areas, like getting a good night's sleep, is actually going to help you to make better food choices, physiologically and psychologically. So all that to say, there's many components, but I think building awareness is always the first step. And then from there, taking one small action that is going to make you feel better. So forget about what it might look like, because until you have a solid foundation and you've been consistently implementing healthy behaviors, you can't focus on weight loss. Actually, I think that actually is what screws us up. I think what most people need to focus on is weight maintenance, because they are so used to going up and down and up and down and up and down. It's like, let's look at maintaining the same weight for 3 months in a row as a real win. Not just maintaining, but also now, in addition to that, they feel better in their skin. They have more energy. They have more solid bowel movements. Their hair, skin, and nails are better. Their energy is up. Their libido is up. All of these things. And they're at a consistent weight, right? And their relationship with food is better. It's like they can go to a restaurant or order in takeout and not have anxiety around it and feel confident with making their food choices. Once you do that, you're eating 3 balanced meals a day, right? You're drinking lots of water, you're getting enough sleep, you're consistently working out, right? And allowing for rest days, whatever it is. Once you get to there, then we can manipulate, we can tweak, we can see, okay, what small changes from there can we make, so that we can start to see, maybe if you have a fat loss goal or a weight loss goal, that's when we can start playing with the calorie deficit a little bit, right? But nothing extreme, because we know that the extremes usually end, it's a dead end, right? So start with just building a solid foundation. And then from there, see what shifts you can make. And honestly, you'll probably notice that if the scale doesn't go down, your body composition changes, right? You're just going to
Yep.
look at yourself in the mirror and be like, wow, I'm really proud of myself. Not so much because of what I look like, but more so because of I've committed to what I said I was going to do and I followed through with it. And that's what builds self-confidence, which helps with body image and so many other things. So building awareness, starting small, and then focus on consistency. Okay. Consistency is everything. So if we're doing well Monday through Friday, we have to remember that Saturday and Sunday are also part of the week. And that, you know, it doesn't matter how well you're doing Monday through Friday if you're saying screw it Saturday and Sunday, right? So finding the balance on a consistent basis is really what's going to help you in the long run.
Yes. And you also say to ask yourself if this will last through the honeymoon phase.
So those are the 3 questions before you even start. There's 3 questions where before you start, in the middle of something, or even after, that can really help you into kind of figuring out what's the next step, right? So will this last past the honeymoon phase? That's the very first question before you start anything, because as we know, it's always easy in the beginning, but is it going to work after the 6-month mark, right? Or is it going to work once, like, you know, all of, like, you know, the fun stuff fizzles out, because it always does, whether that be a relationship or a new diet. Like, you know, are you still going to be able to, do you feel like the workouts that you're doing are something that you enjoy, or do you feel like you're fighting yourself to do it and you're only just doing it because it's new and shiny, right?
Right.
The foods that you're eating, do you actually like them? So that's the second question, actually, is, do I even like this, right? So maybe in the beginning you're like, oh, I can see myself doing this past the 6 months, but then you get past that mark and you're like, I changed my mind. I don't even like this food anymore. I don't even like these workouts anymore. Like, I don't like this partner anymore, whatever it is. Like, do I even like this? Because if you don't like it anymore, you don't have to keep doing it. You might have to shift, or you can stop. But then you have to go to the third question, which is, what lessons did I learn from this? So if you choose to stop doing a diet or dating a partner, whatever it is, if you choose to stop, don't just end it and then think like, oh, that was a waste of my time. Or now you go into another diet that's very similar. It's just in a different book, right? Like, whatever it is, like, what lessons did I learn from that? So maybe there was components to it that you did enjoy, and maybe there was components that you didn't. You brought up keto before, and I think that's a great example. I think when someone does keto, they forget that they're not only eliminating, you know, they're eliminating carbs, but they're probably went from having, like, sweets and like sugar in their coffee and, like, you know, all of these added things, right? And they're also excluding like complex carbs, like they're also not allowing themselves to have like starches, you know, starchy veggies or
Carrot,
oatmeal, or quinoa, or yeah, like stuff like that, like fruits and veggies, like, whereas, you know, we know that that's not sustainable, right? So the lesson isn't that you need to cut out all carbohydrates. The lesson is, let me be more mindful of the carbohydrates that I choose to eat, and let me incorporate more of those complex carbs that are higher in fiber, that have nutrients to them, that make me feel good. And then when I have a craving for something sweet, I just don't overindulge it. So it's not like I'm having it every single day in large quantities, but I allow myself to have it when that craving comes up, and then I just keep it moving, and I'm now no longer excluding it, right? So that could be the lesson there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's many lessons that can be in lots of different diets and whatnot. But what ultimately, what I teach is, you know, how the once upon a diet method is from taking those components from everything that you've done in the past, or like the quality of that relationship, right? Like, what was it about that person that you really enjoyed, and what were the components of it that you didn't, and what are your deal breakers? You know, because your deal breakers, whether, you know, if it's a plan that's telling you that you're not allowed to have coffee, well, I'm a coffee lover, so if you take coffee out of my plan, I'm not following it long term, right? So you have to kind of know that going into it in order for you to know to break the pattern and to not repeat that cycle.
Yeah, know yourself.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And just like relationships, if you don't learn from your past relationships, you're just going to keep repeating the same thing over and over again, just like if you keep doing that with your dieting. And I always talk about like preparing the body for weight loss and just going, okay, let's just take a break from dieting. You've been trying to lose weight for 10, 20 years now. Stop. Let's just like learn how to have good eating habits. Like you said, getting some better sleep, stress management, all of these factors that really play into your food habits. get that down first. And then, like you said, also get the mind stuff down, like journal, figure it out, what's getting in the way. Are you going to be able to sustain this for life, or at least for a long period of time? And are you open to change? I think that that's important as well. As I always say, what might work for you now might not work in a year. Right.
And that's also okay. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing that I think people, maybe we need to like get clear on for people is it's not what you don't have to do the same exact thing forever. Right. There's certain things that like foundationally, like, getting good sleep is like pretty much like your whole life, and if you don't, that's fine. But like what's going to happen is certain things are going to, be harder to kind of follow through on. But all that to say, like, you're to have different stages in your life where your priorities shift and things change, but that doesn't mean that we neglect all the aspects of a healthy lifestyle. It just means that we might be a little bit more tuned in during certain stages and a little bit more tuned out, but we're not giving up. Right. And depending on where you're at in life, you might need to make certain tweaks, during a very busy period where normally maybe you love to cook from home, but maybe because you're super, super busy, you decide you're going to like have food delivered to you. That's fine. That doesn't make it good or bad, right? It's what's in it. And, how often are you, what are you having with it and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. And there's lots more in the book. She gives lots of great tools and how to get going on all of this. So I really like that. So where can people find you? What do you got for us?
Yeah. Well, if you like this conversation, then I know you're going to love my book. So go to Amazon to get your copy. There's paperback, Kindle, and audio available. I also have my own podcast, the Tips of Toni podcast, that Karen's going to be a guest on really, really soon. So you'll be able to hear that as well. And if you want to follow more of my content, I'm really big on Instagram at tips_with_Toni with an I.
And I will link to those in the show notes so you guys don't have to remember. Well, Toni, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you
for your
so
podcast.
Much. Yeah.
It's been great. We see eye to eye on a lot of things. So Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.